to cassimotive, and in this video what I wanted to do is I wanted to share with you 6 lessons that I learned from this new documentary on Amazon, which has been released by the Jonas brothers, called Chasing Happiness. If you followed me for a little while now, one of the things that you will know is that I've essentially been on the quest to answer 2 questions. Number 1, how do we get what we want in life? How do we go from A to Z? How do we become successful? How do we live an extraordinary life? How do we achieve greatness in our lifetime? How do we go from A to Z? How do we actually get the life that we desire? And the second question that I was really fascinated with is it possible to achieve success, to go on and live an extraordinary life, have a great family, have great friendships, go on to achieve the level of success financially and in terms of our career that we want, but not end up divorced, not end up stepping on everybody on our path to get there, not end up turning into a dickhead, not end up essentially getting there and feeling depressed and getting to the point of suicidal, which I believe that so many people had. And so you can imagine, of course, when I saw this show being aired, a show about 3 boys who have literally achieved the thing that they wanted. They've got stardom, they have money, they have girls, they have it all, and yet they broke up as a band, and yet they didn't speak to each other for like 5 years. I was, of course, fascinated, because that is literally the epitome of what I was trying to avoid and that I wanted to try and understand. Why is it that some people achieve this success and yet everything goes wrong? And they shared with us 6 lessons in this video, in the documentary, that I think are going to be really useful for you in your life if you're somebody who is trying to excel, somebody who is trying to reach your goal and live an extraordinary life and really push to the edges of your capacity. And I really hope that I can serve you and help you become a higher, fuller expression of yourself. So let's go through these 6 lessons. By the way, if you like the lessons and they're useful to you, then I'd ask you to jump onto my YouTube channel, Cassimotive, subscribe to it so that I can keep sending you more of these videos, so that you can become your highest, fullest expression of yourself. So let's go through these 6 lessons from the documentary Chasing Happiness by the Jonas brothers. The first lesson that I learned, which I'd like to share with you, which I hope adds some value into your life, is that when things are going well in life, don't be scared to become confrontational. In life, whether it be in terms of our relationship, whether it be in terms of our career, whether it be in terms of our health, there is a tendency for us human beings to end up managing our life instead of progressing our life. I talk about what I call the 6 stages of life. I essentially studied lots and lots of people, and one of the things that became very apparent to me is that a lot of people essentially felt that they had reached their potential. A lot of people felt that they had hit a ceiling, they'd hit a plateau on how far they could go. But I always could see that these individuals had more potential, that there was another level of life that they could go to. And I needed to find a way to be able to show people sort of like a ladder, to give them sort of like a stepping stone to be able to get there. And I came up and I observed that essentially in life, there are what are like 6 stages. The first stage is what I call the survival stage. Okay, that's where you're struggling, things are tough, and you're trying to do the best that you can. This is like the single mum who's just trying to work part-time, and she's trying to raise a little one. She has no money, she can't even go and like get her nails done. This is that kind of stage. Then you go into what I call security, where somebody now has got a little bit, maybe they've got a little bit of money, they've shaved a little bit, maybe they're renting somewhere, but now their whole job is to try and not lose it, which ends up meaning that they put guards around, their heart, they put guards around their progress, they try to don't take any risks or anything like that. And I share with people that a lot of people always end up staying in this stage because of this desire not to basically fail, not to look like that they've messed up. And it's really hard, especially, I mean, if you look at like relationships where you've given yourself out to someone and you've put your life on the line and you've invested a huge amount of your time in somebody, and then that person fucks you over or betrays you, It is hard, and some of us, what we end up doing is we end up putting walls around our heart, which stops anyone from getting in, but also it stops anyone from us from experiencing anything from the outside. But also, in terms of a relationship, that may be a couple. I've had the opportunity and the privilege to be able to study a lot of couples that have been married for long periods of time, or who've been together for long periods of time, but also couples who didn't make it, couples who broke up. And I asked them questions, and one of the things that becomes apparent when you start asking people why they split up is that a lot of people, when they had their relationship going well, they got stuck at that survival mode, at the security mode, where they were just trying to keep things exactly the way they were. They didn't want things to change. They didn't want to sort of ruffle the feathers. They didn't want to cause any tension. They didn't want to upset anybody. They didn't want everything to go wrong, because they've invested so much and now they have something to lose. And that's just part of life. If you want to get to the next level, if you want to progress, if you want to be able to actually make progress and movement and be able to go up in life, whether it be financially, relationally, emotionally, spiritually, you have to be able to take that risk, and you have to be able to invest more than you can afford to actually lose. Because when you do that, it allows you a sense of vulnerability. It actually starts the receiving process. See, when you activate giving and you go out there and put your heart out there, it automatically engages the receiving process, because now you've engaged the law of sowing and reaping. The law of sowing and reaping essentially says, in order to receive something, you must firstly plant. You cannot go into a garden and try to reap fruit when you haven't gone and planted the garden. So I would encourage you in your life, if things are going good at the moment, ask yourself, are you confronting things that are upsetting? If your health is going good, are you taking it to the next level? Because what I have found is, if you're not taking anything that isn't growing, essentially is automatically dying. Anything that isn't progressing is automatically dying. If you have a car and you left the car there on your driveway or where you live and you didn't drive it for 4 years, I'm telling you, when you come back and attempt to drive that car, it's not going to be able to start. It's actually going to begin to rust. If you take your arm and you put it in one of those casts and you leave it there for like 8 months and you take it off and try to use it again, you're not going to be able to use it in the same way as the one that's been empty. Why? Because anything that is not growing, or anything that we trap, or anything that we don't utilize, this is where the law of use actually comes in. The law of use simply says that anything you do not use, you lose. So if you are a loving person but you don't use your love, guess what? It diminishes. You don't get more love by not using it. Does that make sense what I mean by that? It's like if you go and try to build your muscles and you build them to be massive, but then you stop building them, what eventually happens? They get smaller and smaller. They diminish. So ask yourself in your life, am I making progress in my life? Wonderful. I've got a relationship now. Wonderful. Well, what's the next stage that I can take this relationship to? Wonderful. I've got a job now. I'm the manager. Okay. Well, am I now going am I seeking to be the regional manager? This isn't about trying to be better than other people. It's just about always making progress. That's just how human beings we work, unfortunately. If we're not progressing and going to the next level, this is actually the path that leads people to unhappiness. One of the things that I don't know if you're aware of is, if you study people who've tried to commit suicide, one of the things that they talk about, and you will hear them speak about a lot, if you go on YouTube and listen to interviews of people who are survivors of an attempted suicide attempt, they will talk about things like, I felt like my life meant nothing. I felt like everything that I was doing didn't have any meaning. It didn't have any significance. I felt that my life was out of my control. You hear them say these types of patterns because there is a sense that if you're not progressing, if you're working hard, if everything that you do has no progress, it's not making any movement, it's not making any progress, what's the point in life then? All you do is work and work and work and work, or give and give and give to a relationship, but nothing. So you're not making progress, but you're not moving forward, but you don't feel any better or any joy or any fulfillment or a deeper connection. What's the whole point in doing it? So I would encourage you in your life, to really look at your life and see where you're not becoming confrontational. It might be your relationship, it might be your health, it may be your spiritual life, it may be your money, that you've got to a stage in your life now where you're earning good money, but you're no longer trying to push it to the next level, and you're trying to be in that stage of life which I call security. The second lesson that I wanted to share with you, which I hope adds some value into your life, is to find where you belong. I share with people that one of the things that I, in my life, found out that was a mistake that I made is when I was growing up as a child, I never really felt like I really belonged anywhere. When I was growing up, I never really felt like a white person. I never really felt like a black person. I never really felt like I was one of the lads, but I never really felt like I wasn't one of the lads. I was never somebody who was like into football, because all my mates were into football and FIFA and things like that. But on the other alternative stuff, I wasn't really like a geek, kind of into books and all that kind of stuff. So all my whole life, I grew up certainly not all my life, but probably up to about the age of 24, I grew up with a sense of nobody gets me, nobody understands me. I'm wandering about in the world alone. It's like the way I saw myself was like a boat that's out, a single boat, little boat that's out in the middle of the ocean. And there is just nothing around you. You feel this sort of void, this sense of emptiness, this sense of loneliness, because just nobody understands you. Nobody has the same story as you. Nobody understands the kind of goals that you want. Nobody has the same hunger as you. And when you get to the point in your life where you can find where you belong, where you can find your people, where you can find your calling in life, where you can find your mission, I share when I do leadership videos that your vision will actually attract people to you. When you know what it is that you're here to do, when you know what your mission is, when you know what you stand for, what your convictions are, when you know what your core values are, all of a sudden other people who believe what you believe begin to come into your life. They begin to become attracted to you because of the person you become. It is for this reason why Jim Rohn said that what we get in life is not important, it's what we become that is the most important thing. And so what I would suggest to you, and is really the lesson that I learned and took away, is to find where you belong, find your group, find your values, find your conviction, find what you stand for, find what you're trying to fight for, because that way you will find the place where you're supposed to fit. And can I also suggest something to you, which I share with leaders? I share with leaders that the reason why you don't fit in, the reason why nobody gets you, the reason why there are some people in your life who've done exactly the same things as you and yet the consequences haven't been as bad for them, the reason why you've gone through so much pain, through so much suffering, why the reason why your life just seems to have been so difficult, and yet you see other people who have it so easy and they haven't had the same struggles as you, and you've had to overcome so many obstacles. The reason why you're doing that is because you're the only person who can survive it. In all honesty, this is what I found. In my experience, I have found that and tell me if I'm wrong here, but go with me here. And I was actually saying this to my friend the other day. If we took your life, everything that you've been through, all the pain that you've suffered, the heartbreaks, the betrayals, the obstacles that you've had to overcome, if we took that, right, and let's just choose one of your friends or somebody who you know, and we gave them the experience that you've had, they wouldn't be able to take it, could they? That they would break. You've been through so much that your life, they wouldn't. I mean, look at you now. You're more loving, you're passionate, you're driven, you're kinder than ever before, you're more empathetic than ever before. You've actually managed to come out on the other side. But a lot of people, if we gave them what you've been through, they'll be dicks. They would turn to the dark side. And so what I would, and is really the lesson that I want to share with you, is don't be scared to be alone. Don't be scared to be a boat out in the middle of the ocean, because when you become your own uniqueness, and you know where you stand and what you stand for and what you're fighting for and what you've been through and what makes you unique, trust me, all of a sudden you're going to start meeting and coming across other boats who believe what you believe, stand for what you stand for. And it may only be 2 or 3. Listen, so many of us, we think that in order to live a rich life, we have to find like literally thousands of boats and have them around us. No. If you can find 2 or 3 different boats that believe what you believe, my God, you're going to live the most remarkable life. I believe it was Jim Rohn who said that if 2 or 3 agree on a common purpose, on a common goal, on a common vision, then nothing is impossible. I'm wondering what you believe in so much and what you stand for that is so strong that you found where you belong and where you sit, that if you could find 2 or 3 different people who sit and believe what you believe, that together you could do the most remarkable things. The third lesson that I wanted to share with you, which I learned from the documentary, is the significance of how important your health is. This is a common theme amongst essentially every person who I've studied who talks about happiness and joy and fulfillment. It is a common theme that it can essentially, without understanding the significance of this, it's really, really, really hard and really, really tough to really live an abundant life. Because the way your health, as in the vitality that you have, how comfortable you feel in your body, how much energy you have, is going to be have a knock-on effect on every other area of your life. You know, there are so many people, right, who they actually have found their life partner. They have found the person who is for them. The person gives them a headache. It's an absolute nightmare. They argue all the time. But this is a person, and they wouldn't change this person for the world. But this person who is in this relationship doesn't love who they are. They don't have self-confidence. They don't believe in themselves. They lack self-esteem. They live in a body that they don't really love. That when they look in the mirror, you know, there is an exercise which I go through where I suggest to people, if you really want to know what your self-image of yourself, what you think about yourself, for a month, go in the mirror every single morning and say 5 things that you like about yourself. And I've got to tell you, most people can't find 5 things to say about themselves. To find 5 different things every single day that you can say about yourself for a month, for most of us, this is impossible. We can't do it. Yet we have great friends, we have a good career, we may have children, we may be grandparents, we may be uncles and nieces and nephews and whatever, but we don't look at ourselves in that. And so many of us, this is why part of the road that leads to a lot of people's happiness, because we're always looking for this external affirmation. We're always looking for other people to tell us that we're brilliant, to tell us that we're amazing, to tell us that we have a good body. But what we want to do is get ourselves to a point where we love ourselves for who we truly are, where we accept ourselves. Like, Jim Rohn once said something which changed the course of my life. He said that we must all suffer one of 2 pains in life. We must either suffer the pain of discipline or we must suffer the pain of regret. He said, either way, you have to suffer one of these pains. So you'll either have to suffer getting yourself to go and work out, to do the work that you have to in order to get yourself to a state where you have a good self-image, where you have self-esteem. It may be drinking more water, it may be swimming, it may be trekking a bit more, it may be getting into yoga. Whatever it is for you, you either have to suffer going through that, or you will suffer the regret that you're going to have, where so many people reach like 40, 50, and they're having to make up for what they should have done and discipline themselves to do in their 20s and 30s. I cannot tell you the amount of people who I interview, and they talk about the mistakes. One of the biggest mistakes that they made in their 20s, 30s and 40s is not looking after their health. And now they're at a stage in their life where they can't play with their grandkids. They're having dementia. They're having all sorts of problems with their back. They're having all sorts of problems with their health. There is a knock-on effect. Everything in life has a consequence. And that's why Jim Rohn very correctly said, you either have to suffer the pain. You either have to suffer the pain today, or if you don't, then you will suffer the pain later on. The question is, when do you want to suffer the pain? Do you want to suffer it now, or do you want to suffer it later? Now remember that the human brain wants to always leave things until later. It's easier. What do you think is easier? To do something that you don't want to do now, or to postpone it and think about doing it later? Of course you want to do it later. But the key to this, and this is where wisdom and maturity comes in, is you have to be so intelligent that you say, okay, if I continue on this current path, where is it going to lead me in 10, 15, 20 years' time? If I continue allowing my body to be like this and feeling the way that I feel at the moment, how is that going to impact my marriage? How is that going to impact my relationship? How is that, what model or role model am I being for my children? How will my children, I remember I was watching a documentary which was on Oprah, and it talked about a little girl who was 6 years of age, and the little girl was having a lot of difficulty with eating, and she talked about the fact that that she didn't want to eat because she didn't want to be fat. And so the psychologist woman starts asking the mother about the mother and how she, what she thinks about how health and things like this. And the mother said, well, I used to suffer with anorexia, and I used to suffer a lot with eating and problems like that. And I used to always talk about the fact that I've got to watch what I eat, and I've got to watch what I put in my body, and I'm very, very conscious of it. And the woman says to her, do you realize that by you being like this, and by having a very low self-esteem about yourself, by you having, getting yourself to a stage where you didn't even, you basically were hurting yourself, and that your child picked up on it, and as a result the child has developed this mentality and this mindset and this belief system that in order to look good you've got to basically hurt yourself, and you've got to starve yourself, and you've got to go through all these various things. And the woman was like, well, no, I didn't do that. Well, that wasn't me. That was my intention. And the psychologist woman said to her, but as a mother, you have to recognize the consequences of what you did or what you didn't do. Everything has a consequence, and you either suffer the consequence now or you suffer the consequences later. The consequence doesn't necessarily mean a negative thing. It can also mean a positive thing, right? A consequence of putting work into your marriage is that you now, or working on your marriage or working on your relationship through the dark times, is that later on you now have a great marriage which is lasting 40, 50 years, right? That's a consequence. That's the result. So really the lesson that I want to share with you is you've got to get a handle of your health. I cannot overemphasize the significance and the importance of your health on the impact that it will have on all the other areas of your life. I'm telling you, you can be rich, you can have the money that you want, you can have the right car, you can live in the nicest neighborhood, you can have the greatest grandparents, parents, the greatest friends, you can be spiritually great, but if your health is not where it has to be or you need it to be, or where you are in control of it,